The first indication that something is wrong arrives not as a threat contact, not as an alarm, and not as any kind of signal that the systems monitoring the USS Abraham Lincoln's operational environment are designed to detect. It arrives as an absence. A specific, precise, geometrically improbable absence of biological noise in a 340-meter radius patch of water at bearing 217 degrees, 7 nautical miles southwest of the carrier's current position, at 4:06 a.m. in the northern Arabian Sea. The sonar supervisor on the midnight watch has been listening to the ocean for 11 hours. In the Arabian Sea in late February, the acoustic environment is dense and layered. Thermal gradients from the warm surface water create unpredictable sound velocity channels. Commercial shipping traffic generates a low-frequency background that the processing algorithms have to work around continuously. And the biological noise from the region's deepwater fish populations produces a texture of ambient sound that experienced sonar operators learn to read the way a weather observer reads cloud formations. Variation in biological noise is normal. It shifts with currents, temperature, and the movements of prey populations. What is not normal, what has no natural acoustic explanation, is a circular zone of biological silence that holds its shape and position across 4 consecutive passive sonar sweep cycles at intervals of 3 minutes and 20 seconds each. Fish move away from pressure, from vibration, from the low-frequency mechanical signature of a large submerged object holding station against a current. The absence of biological noise at bearing 217 is not a gap in the data. It is a shape, and the shape it traces, held across 13 minutes of sweep cycles, is consistent with a displacement on the order of 8,000 to 9,000 metric tons, holding near stationary, at a depth the thermal layer analysis places between 180 and 240 meters. At 4:19 a.m., the sonar supervisor marks the contact as non-classified, a professional notation, meaning the contact has not yet met the threshold for a confirmed identification, but warrants continued monitoring. At 4:27 a.m., he upgrades it to possible submarine contact and initiates the classification protocol that brings the anti-submarine warfare coordinator into the loop. By 4:35 a.m., the ASW coordinator has reviewed the acoustic data and concurs. The biological shadow is real, it is not dissipating, and its movement pattern over the past 29 minutes is consistent with a vessel using ultra-quiet propulsion in a deliberate surveillance position, close enough to the carrier's track to maintain consistent passive intercept geometry, far enough out to remain below the noise floor of the carrier's active sonar systems, which have not been activated, because this is not a declared threat environment, and active sonar in a high shipping density corridor generates diplomatic complications with regional partners. At 4:41 a.m., a P-8 Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft, currently 80 miles to the northeast, running a standard anti-submarine sweep pattern in support of the strike group's transit, is redirected to bearing 217. Its crew is given a search datum and a contact description. They are not told the origin of the datum. They fly toward it in the dark. The contact at bearing 217 does not attempt to evade. It continues holding station. This is, to the ASW coordinator's experienced assessment, more significant than evasion would be. A submarine that evades on detection has been caught doing something it assessed as risky. A submarine that holds station after detection has assessed that detection does not matter, either because it has already accomplished its objective, or because it is operating under rules of engagement that permit it to remain in international waters conducting surveillance, regardless of whether that surveillance has been observed. Both assessments lead to the same operational conclusion. The contact has been collecting data on the Lincoln's track, speed, heading, and operational pattern for a period of time that is not yet fully bounded, and the question of whether to continue passive monitoring or escalate to active classification measures now carries consequences that extend beyond the immediate tactical situation. The P-8 arrives on station at 5:03 a.m. and deploys a sonobuoy field across a 12-kilometer pattern centered on the datum. The sonobuoy returns confirm the contact within 90 seconds. The acoustic signature that comes back through the sonobuoy array's passive hydrophones is not ambiguous to the two operators processing it in the P-8's acoustic system console. They have heard this signature before. In training databases, in prior deployment acoustic libraries, in the classified compilation of known foreign submarine acoustic fingerprints that the U.S. Navy maintains with a specificity that no unclassified document has ever described. The signature belongs to a Type 093 Shang-class nuclear-powered attack submarine of the People's Liberation Army Navy. Hull number not determinable from passive data at this range. Operating profile consistent with sustained intelligence collection posture. Estimated time on station. The biological shadow data suggests the contact has been holding position for a minimum of 4 hours, and possibly as long as 7. The Lincoln's operational schedule for the previous 7 hours included the transmission of a strike group operations order update, a regularly scheduled encrypted communication package broadcast on a frequency and using a cryptographic architecture that the U.S. Navy's operational security doctrine classifies as secure against all known foreign collection capabilities. The package included updated patrol route parameters, fuel transfer timing windows, and the projected launch cycle scheduling for the first 36 hours of Operation Epic Fury, which is now 61 hours from its authorized execution window. The package was transmitted at 1:47 a.m. on a low probability of intercept waveform. The Type 093 was based on the biological shadow timeline present and in collection position during that transmission window. What follows from this assessment is a classified intelligence problem that branches in 2 directions simultaneously. The first branch is tactical. What does a planned submarine in collection posture during an Epic Fury operations order transmission mean for the immediate security of the strike group and the operational integrity of the mission timeline? The second branch is strategic and significantly more disturbing. Why is a planned submarine conducting sustained intelligence collection on a U.S. carrier strike group in the Arabian Sea during the 72-hour window before a joint U.S.-Israeli strike on Iran? China and Iran share an extensive economic relationship, a broadly aligned set of interests in reducing U.S. forward presence in the Middle East, and a documented intelligence cooperation framework that U.S. counterintelligence assessments have characterized as active and ongoing across multiple domains. A planned submarine collecting the Lincoln's operational schedule during the pre-strike window is not a standalone curiosity. It is a potential link in a chain that ends with the IRGC receiving targeting data on the Lincoln's projected position during the Epic Fury launch cycle. Data precise enough to build a ballistic missile strike solution around. The assessment team assembled at 6:15 a.m. in the strike group commander's briefing space. 8 people, no notes taken, the room's recording systems disabled by protocol, works through the problem with a speed driven by the operational timeline, pressing in from one side, and the intelligence gap pressing in from the other. They do not know whether the encrypted transmission was successfully collected. They do not know whether the planned submarine has already passed whatever it collected to a shore-based relay. They do not know the precise duration of the collection window or the full scope of what was in intercept range. What they know is, the contact exists, the timeline aligns, and the IRGC has both the motivation and the existing targeting architecture to receive and act on positional intelligence about the Lincoln before and during Epic Fury's execution window. At 6:44 a.m., the strike group commander makes a decision that will require 19 separate coordination actions across 4 commands in the next 4 hours, all executed through channels that do not indicate to any external observer that the decision has been made. The Lincoln's projected patrol route for the 36 hours preceding Epic Fury's execution, the route embedded in the operations order transmitted at 1:47 a.m., is invalidated. a new route is constructed. The new route maintains the Lincoln's ability to execute its strike tasking while shifting the projected launch position by 31 nautical miles north-northeast from the coordinates embedded in the potentially compromised transmission. 31 miles. At the engagement ranges involved in an IRGC anti-ship ballistic missile strike on a carrier in the Arabian Sea, 31 miles of positional error does not merely degrade the targeting solution, it eliminates it. An SM-2 engagement envelope at those ranges is measured in tens of miles. A ballistic missile trajectory optimized for a coordinate set that places the carrier at the center of the engagement geometry becomes a ballistic missile flying toward empty water when the carrier is 31 miles from where the targeting data said it would be. The 4 coordination actions that matter most are executed between 7 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. The first is a quiet routing update to the carrier's navigation plan, implemented as a standard operational adjustment with no unusual administrative signature. The second is a coordination message to Israeli strike planning elements, transmitted through a channel not associated with the potentially compromised frequency, adjusting the launch corridor deconfliction geometry to reflect the new projected position. The third is an update to the 2 escort destroyers' patrol parameters, implemented under cover of a routine formation adjustment. The fourth, the most delicate, is a decision about what to transmit on the original compromised frequency during the next scheduled operations order update window. At 10:15 a.m., the scheduled update window opens. The transmission that goes out on the 1:47 a.m. frequency is complete, correctly formatted, cryptographically valid, and entirely consistent with the operational pattern of the preceding 72 hours. The projected launch position it contains is the one from the invalidated route. The coordinates the IRGC would already have from the original transmission, unchanged, confirming the Lincoln is precisely where it was supposed to be. The transmission is 100% fabricated in every operationally significant detail. It took the strike group's intelligence officer and operations officer 47 minutes to construct it, so that every secondary reference, fuel states, air wing configuration, formation geometry, is internally consistent with the false position without containing any element that a sophisticated analyst could use to identify the inconsistency. The 47 minutes were tense. The transmission is clean. The Type 093 holds station through the morning. The P-8 maintains its sonobuoy field and passive track. A second P-8 is repositioned from a patrol sector 140 miles to the northwest to provide overlapping acoustic coverage and ensure continuous tracking without gaps. The planned submarine does not maneuver aggressively. It does not attempt to close the carrier's position. It continues doing exactly what it has been doing: listening. At 11:47 a.m., it begins a slow transit to the southwest, a movement consistent with a planned departure from the collection area rather than an emergency withdrawal. The acoustic signature fades across 40 minutes as the submarine increases depth and speed. By 12:28 p.m., it has left the sonobuoy coverage pattern. The P-8 extends tracking with a second sonobuoy deployment further southwest. The contact is held until 1:15 p.m., at which point it crosses into a water depth and ambient noise environment that makes passive tracking non-viable. The Type 093 is assessed as transiting toward international waters at a course and speed consistent with a return to the plan's nearest forward operating facility at Gwadar, Pakistan, 340 nautical miles to the northeast. The intelligence produced by the Type 093's collection operation, whatever portion of the encrypted 1:47 a.m. transmission it successfully intercepted, and whatever supplementary track, speed, and heading data its passive systems built over 7 hours of surveillance, has presumably been transmitted to its shore relay network at some point during or after the collection period. The U.S. side cannot verify this. What it can do is ensure that the only operationally significant element of that intelligence, the projected launch position of the Lincoln during Epic Fury's execution window, reflects coordinates that are now 31 miles from the ship's actual position. Operation Epic Fury executes on schedule. The Lincoln's air wing launches its first strike package at 2:19 a.m. on February 28th from a position 31 miles northeast of the coordinates the IRGC has been working with since receiving the intelligence package routed through the PLAN relay network. The IRGC's retaliatory strike planning, built around a targeting solution for the Lincoln's projected position, has allocated 6 Khalij-Fars anti-ship ballistic missiles, a precision anti-ship variant with an active radar terminal seeker, to engage the carrier during its launch cycle recovery window. The missiles are fired from a coastal battery site in Hormozgan province at 3:41 a.m., time to the projected launch cycle recovery period embedded in the intelligence the IRGC received. The Lincoln is not at the target coordinates. It has not been at those coordinates since 7 a.m. the previous morning. The 6 Khalij-Fars missiles follow their program trajectories to the designated impact area and find nothing. Their terminal seekers scan the sea surface across their acquisition footprints. 3 of the 6 acquire a radar return from a large surface contact, the 35,000-ton Fleet Oiler RFA Tidespring, operating 22 miles from the Lincoln at the edge of the missile's acquisition range, a contact large enough to trigger the seeker's discrimination threshold. Those 3 missiles attempt terminal acquisition. The Lincoln's escort destroyers, which have been tracking the Khalij-Fars launch from first boost phase detection at 3:41 a.m., have SM-2 fire control solutions computed on all 6 tracks before the missiles complete their mid-course flight. The 3 attempting acquisition of the Oiler are engaged first, neutralized at ranges between 28 and 34 nautical miles. The 3 that found no acquisition target and are executing their terminal fallback protocols, autonomous sea-skimming search patterns, are engaged in sequence. The last intercept fires at 3:47 a.m. and produces a detonation visible on the Lincoln's radar screen as a momentary bloom at 19 nautical miles before fading to nothing. The Oiler sustains no damage. Its crew, which spent 4 minutes and 8 seconds in a general quarters posture, they will describe for the rest of their careers as the 4 minutes they do not discuss at family gatherings, resumes underway replenishment operations at 4:03 a.m. The Lincoln completes its first strike package recovery at 4:11 a.m., launches its second package at 4:47 a.m., and continues Epic Fury operations on schedule. The after-action assessment reconstructs the intelligence chain with the precision that only becomes possible in retrospect, when the pieces that were not visible in the moment can be assembled against the confirmed timeline. The Type 093, collected from approximately 9:15 p.m. on February 26th through approximately 11:47 a.m. on February 27th, a collection window of roughly 14.5 hours. The encrypted transmission at 1:47 a.m. fell within that window. Whether the planned submarine successfully collected that transmission in a form that yielded actionable positional data is assessed as probable, but not confirmed, based on the IRGC's subsequent targeting behavior, which was precisely consistent with the coordinates in the compromised transmission, and entirely inconsistent with the actual position of the carrier during the engagement window. The intelligence passed from the plan collection asset to the IRGC represents, in the assessment of the counterintelligence team that reviewed the chain, the most operationally significant instance of third-party intelligence facilitation against a U.S. and naval asset in the Arabian Sea region in the current conflict period. The numbers: 14.5 hours of collection by the Type 093 before detection, 4 hours between the biological shadow detection and full contact classification, 31 nautical miles of positional displacement that transformed a targeting quality intelligence package into a navigational reference for empty water, 6 Khalij-Fars missiles fired at coordinates 31 miles from the ship they were designed to reach. 6 intercepted or lost acquisition without reaching their intended target. 0 damage to any fleet asset. 1 fabricated operations order transmission, built in 47 minutes, that confirmed to the adversary's collection architecture that nothing had changed, while everything had already changed. The sea does not care about the precision of a targeting solution. It simply remains where it is, indifferent to the coordinates assigned to it by a collection asset that never confirmed what it thought it found. The Lincoln moved. The missiles did not know. The gap between those two facts, 31 miles, manufactured in a briefing room at 6:44 a.m. by a commander who understood that the most decisive action he could take was a navigational one, is the distance between a strike group that completed its mission and one that did not. In naval warfare, the greatest deception is not the one the enemy sees through too late. It is the one they never realize was a deception at all, because the evidence they collected confirmed exactly what they expected to find, and the ship they were certain they had found was already somewhere else. The after-action assessment reconstructs the intelligence chain with the precision that only becomes possible in retrospect. The Type 093, collected from approximately 9:15 p.m. on February 26th through 11:47 a.m. on February 27th, a window of roughly 14.5 hours. The 1:47 a.m. encrypted transmission fell within that window. Whether the planned submarine collected it in a form yielding actionable positional data is assessed as probable, based on the IRGC's targeting behavior, aligning precisely with the compromised coordinates and being entirely inconsistent with the carrier's actual position during the engagement window. The intelligence passed from the plan asset to the IRGC represents the most operationally significant instance of third-party intelligence facilitation against a U.S. naval asset in the Arabian Sea region in the current conflict period. The deeper question, addressed in a classified annex not reviewable within any foreseeable declassification cycle, is what the presence of a plan type 093 in sustained collection posture on a U.S. carrier during the pre-strike window of a joint U.S.-Israeli operation represents at the strategic level. The submarine was not attacking. It was not threatening. It was operating within every applicable standard of international maritime law. It was collecting intelligence and passing it through whatever relay architecture connects the planned submarine force to the IRGC targeting network, to a party that would use it to attempt to destroy an American warship. The weapon was not Chinese. The intelligence that guided it was. The distinction between those two facts is a political and legal one. The operational reality is that a Type 093 in international waters in the Arabian Sea is a link in a targeting chain that ends with a missile looking for a carrier. The Lincoln's crew will never receive formal acknowledgement of what was preserved on February 27th. The navigational adjustment will be documented as a routine operational modification for weather and formation management. The fabricated transmission will not appear in any record accessible below a classification tier that very few people in government ever reach. The P8 track and acoustic classification of the Type 093 will be held in a database the families of the detecting sailors will never see. What will be visible to anyone reading the unclassified Epic Fury operational reporting carefully is a single anomaly. 6 IRGC anti-ship ballistic missiles fired into the Arabian Sea during the strike group's launch cycle that produced no damage, no reported intercept engagement from the carrier's own systems, and no explanation. The missiles went somewhere. The carrier was not there. That absence is the most revealing detail in the record. The numbers the classified documentation will carry: 14.5 hours of planned collection before detection and classification. 7 of those hours before the sonar supervisor noticed the biological shadow. 31 nautical miles of displacement, decided in 22 minutes and executed in under 3 hours. 47 minutes to construct a fabricated operations order that would pass analytic scrutiny at collection agency level. 19 hours between the compromise assessment and the IRGC's launch. 6 College FARS missiles fired. 6 removed from the battlespace through intercept or acquisition failure. 0 damage to fleet assets. 1 fleet oiler crew who spent 4 minutes in a general quarters posture they will carry for the rest of their careers. And 1 sonar supervisor, working his 11th consecutive hour on the midnight watch, who noticed that the fish were gone from a patch of water that should not have been quiet. The sea does not care about the precision of a targeting solution. It simply remains where it is, indifferent to the coordinates assigned to it by a collection asset that never confirmed what it thought it found. The Lincoln moved. The missiles did not know. The gap between those two facts, 31 miles, manufactured in a briefing room at 6:44 a.m. by a commander who understood that the most decisive action available to him was a navigational one, is the distance between a strike group that completed its mission and one that did not. In naval warfare, the greatest deception is not the one the enemy sees through too late. It is the one they never realize was a deception at all, because the evidence they collected confirmed exactly what they expected to find, and the ship they were certain they had located was already somewhere else. The ocean is very large. 31 miles is nothing to it. To the crew of the Lincoln, it was everything.